Here's a simple system that I give students for practicing scales. It's handy because we don't get time in every lesson to go through lots of scales. So here's a good way of making sure they get done between lessons. There are quite a lot of different types of scales, and there are 12 different keys that they can be played in. And it's important to know all 12 keys. And people often struggle with keys that they're less familiar with. So we need to overcome that, and there's a really good way of doing that, and that is the cycle of fourths. The cycle of fourths is just a pattern where the root note, the starting note of each scale, is a perfect fourth higher than the previous scale. So for example, you can see the cycle written out here. Here's C, and then here's F, second key in the cycle. F is a fourth higher than C. C, D, E, F. F is the fourth note of a C scale. And then what's the next thing? It's B flat. That's the fourth note of an F scale. F, G, A, B flat, and so on, all the way around. And you just keep going around this pattern until you eventually come back to C, or wherever you started. And the beauty of the cycle is it's not just an arbitrary pattern. It's actually the way that a lot of chord progressions, especially in jazz tunes, move. So by practicing scales around the cycle, you haven't just covered all 12 keys, you've also, in a way, prepared your hands and your fingers and your muscle memory for following chord changes in the way. Even if that's not something that you're up to yet, practicing scales around the cycle will definitely pay off in the future. So here it is. First, I'm going to demonstrate on the guitar playing major scales, 1 octave, around the cycle of fourths, using 2 different fingering patterns. One of them starts here on the 4th string, and the other one starts here on the 5th string. Notice when I begin on the 4th string, I'm going to use my 4th finger, what a lot of people call pinky. I refuse to because I'm an adult. Anyway, do as you wish. And the 1 octave pattern that starts here on the 5th string, that starts with the 2nd finger, which some of my younger students call the rude finger. I don't because I'm an adult, but you do as you please. Okay, they're the 2 basic patterns. Now, here they are around the cycle. Practice any scale around the cycle of fourths. Here's another one. This is the second of what I like to think of as the big 3. Mixolydian is just a major scale with the 7th note flattened. It goes like this once again, starting on the 4th string. Start with the 4th finger. And starting on the 5th string with the 2nd finger. There are plenty of other scales as well. I'm going to show you another one in just a moment, the Dorian, which is the third of the big three. But I've noticed in conventional music lessons, at least, there's sometimes a tendency to drip feed scales. Students somehow end up believing that they're only allowed to look at the handful of scales that a teacher is talking about at that time. It's especially easy to fall into that trap if you're a student participating in the examinations system, like what we have in Australia, where you do first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and so on. When you're doing your third grade exam, there's a few major scales and a few minor scales that you need to learn to pass the exam. And then the next year you move on and you do your fourth grade exam, and they're different scales. And what seems to happen is the students forget about all the grade 3 scales and they just keep moving on. Okay, it's this sort of drip feed system. But if you're a teacher, you don't need to participate in that. And if you're a student, even if you are doing the exams, it doesn't matter. You don't need to wait for your teacher to invite you to learn this scale or that. They're all out there. They're not hard to find. You're watching this on the internet, so go for your life. They're just one search away. Don't wait till you're invited to learn, every scale. Practice them now, and it's just the cycle of fourths. And if you're playing the guitar, there's absolutely no excuse, because really the fingerings are, we're only using 2 fingerings. Okay, so here's the Dorian scale. Compared to a major scale, the Dorian has a flattened third and it has a flattened seventh. And starting on the 4th string, it looks like this, starting again with the little finger. And there it is, that's the Dorian scale, 1 octave. And here it is starting on the 5th string. I think this one is best starting with the 1st finger, using this fingering. And here it is around the cycle of fourths, using the non-stop rhythm. Okay, so there you have it, major scales, Mixolydians and Dorians around the cycle of fourths. That's pretty useful, even if you're playing saxophone or some other instrument like that that's really hard. Well, there aren't really hard scales or easy scales. There are just scales that are familiar or unfamiliar. So, get familiar with all of them, and this is a great way to do that. It could be any scale. There's not just those 3, but you can practice any of them around the cycle of fourths. On guitar, I do recommend practicing a couple of different fingerings. And again, for the guitarists out there, especially when you're starting out, you don't need 100 different scale shapes. You just don't need that. Just start by learning just 1 or 2 things and get kind of good at doing that. And then by the time you've done that, and if you do a bit of proper practice and get them up to speed, you'll have muscle memory and you'll have technique and you'll have strength and independence in your fingers. And other fingerings, they'll just fall into place really easily as you need them, but you don't need everything all at once. Just start somewhere. Start with this. Why not? It's easy. Okay, pick 1 or 2 scales, move them around the cycle. Don't play them once or twice and then forget them. Keep them as part of your playing. And that's how to get scales to stop being something that you just did once and to become part of your playing and a permanent branch of your skill tree.